Thank you for joining me today to learn more about how to perform a financial reconciliation. This session is intended for members of the committee to help understand the process of the financial reconciliation. Let's go over what we plan to discuss today. We'll go over the what, why, and when of a financial reconciliation. We'll discuss what to do before the financial reconciliation gets started. Then we'll dive deeper into the specific records the treasurer and the secretary provide. Then we'll discuss how to perform some of the steps the committee often has questions about. Finally, we'll briefly cover what happens while the financial reconciliation is in process, so you know what to expect and what you need to do once the review is complete. A financial reconciliation is a thorough review of the PTA records of the treasurer and secretary by a special committee of individuals appointed by the president. The committee is approved by the membership at the annual meeting for the annual review. The committee is approved by the executive board for all other reviews. So why do we do a financial reconciliation? Before the next signers begin their work, we want a neutral group of members to verify the accuracy of the financial records of the PTA, assure the membership that PTA policies and procedures were followed, make sure we qualify for and maintain embezzlement or bond insurance coverage by verifying that a non-signer reviews all PTA accounts and that a financial reconciliation was conducted at least annually. Additionally, we want to check that all legal reporting requirements are met. The goal is not to find something wrong, but to keep everyone accountable, not just the treasurer, but the entire executive board, as every executive board member has a fiduciary duty to the PTA. We want to make sure we're using effective strategies and responsible procedures, and we want the committee to recommend changes if improvements are needed. There are certain times a financial reconciliation is required according to your PTA bylaws. Those are 1. At the end of the fiscal year, 2. When any authorized check signer is added or deleted on any PTA account, and 3. At any time deemed necessary by the president or 3 or more members as documented in writing or meeting minutes. So now that we know what, why, and when, let's talk about the specifics for the timeline of the financial reconciliation. For the required year-end financial reconciliation, the president appoints the Financial Reconciliation Committee with membership approval at the annual meeting. The treasurer and secretary must provide their records to the committee within 10 days of fiscal year end. The committee must complete their work within 30 days of fiscal year end. For any other financial reconciliation, the president appoints, subject to the approval of the executive board, a financial reconciliation committee within 10 days of the request for the reconciliation or change in signer. The reconciliation must occur within 20 days of the committee's formation. Now let's talk about the financial reconciliation document, which is also known as the Financial Reconciliation Checklist and Report. This document is more than just a checklist and report, though. The first page of the document includes instructions for the committee. This includes a reminder of who can't be on the committee. If you find that you are not eligible to be on the committee, inform the president immediately so an alternate can be found. A reminder that all work is confidential and should be completed in a private location is included. Information about what to do if theft, fraud, or embezzlement is suspected is also provided. The instructions page also provides a list of the documents you should receive and from whom. This section provides links with examples of many of the documents so you can see what the document you receive should look like. Before you begin the reconciliation, you'll also need to do a few things. First, each committee member should sign the confidentiality agreement. This is on page 2 of the Financial Reconciliation Committee document. The committee members also need to elect a chair. The chair is the person who presents the financial reconciliation report after it is complete. Pages 3 through 7 are the checklists for each member of the committee. As a committee, you'll want to decide who is assigned to each checklist. You may also decide to divide up the duties differently. The important thing is that all steps on the checklist are complete, and the report is prepared based on the information. Before you get started reviewing records, It's also important to have contact information for the treasurer, secretary, and president. You normally won't need to contact the president, but if you are having trouble getting in touch with the treasurer or the secretary, the president is usually a good resource to help coordinate communication. Let's talk a bit more about who you will receive the records from and in what format. The treasurer and secretary for the period being reviewed are individually responsible for providing their records directly to the committee. The records can be in paper or electronic format or a combination of paper and electronic. The records should be well organized, either in binders or hanging files, or, if electronic, well organized by type of document. Documents within each section or folder should be organized by date so that you are not having to look through every piece of paper to find what you are looking for. If the records aren't organized, ask the person who gave them to you to organize them and give them back by an agreed-upon date. The treasurer provides several items to the committee that are listed on the financial reconciliation document. The first item on the list is the current year annual financial report or a budget to actual report for the period being reviewed. The annual financial report includes all budgeted line items, the most recently approved budget for each line item, and the actual money received or spent for each line item. The report shown on this slide is an example of how the report should look. Depending on the type of accounting software your PTA uses, the one you receive may be slightly different, but it should have all income and expense accounts listed, include a beginning and ending balance, and include a column with the approved budget and a second column with the actual income and expenses for the period. It should show the change in the sales tax payable and change in state and national dues payable accounts at the end of the report to calculate an ending balance of PTA cash. Finally, it should list the ending balance of the sales tax payable account and state and national dues payable account. The next item is the balance sheet. The balance sheet includes the assets and liabilities of the PTA. For most PTAs, the only asset will be cash in the bank, and the only liabilities should be related to state and national dues or for sales tax owed. This slide shows an example of what a balance sheet should look like, although the balance sheet you receive may slightly differ due to the accounting software your PTA uses. The general ledger is the next item the treasurer provides. This is a detail of all the transactions that occurred during the period being reviewed. This can be a report printed from an accounting system, or for PTAs with a small number of transactions, could be an Excel spreadsheet where every deposit with the related income and every disbursement with the related expense is listed. All expenses need a PTA funds request form and a receipt or invoice that matches the request form. We'll take a look at an example of this in a few minutes. Likewise, every time the PTA receives money, a PTA deposit form and a related bank receipt should be available. The total on the PTA deposit form should agree to the bank receipt. We'll also take a look at this in more detail in a bit. The treasurer also provides the committee with all checks for all PTA accounts. Most banks do not return checks that have cleared the bank, so for cleared checks, the bank statements should have images of the checks for the committee to review. The committee should be given all voided checks, as well as the checkbook, which includes all unused checks. Bank statements for all accounts should be provided to the committee, as well as the bank reconciliations done monthly by the treasurer. If the PTA sells items online or accepts credit or debit cards at events, the treasurer should also provide the account reports for these sales. If this is an end-of-year review, the treasurer for a PTA that files a 990N should file the 990N and provide proof of acceptance to the committee. If a PTA files a 990EZ or full 990, the treasurer should provide a draft of the 990EZ or 990 to the committee. If the PTA has a sales tax permit, the sales tax permit should be provided to the committee, as well as the sales tax returns filed for the period being reviewed. Lastly, any letters or notices received from the IRS or Comptroller's Office, or any communication with the IRS or Comptroller's Office, should be provided to the committee to review. The Secretary provides all documents that are presented at meetings. This includes any reports prepared and presented by the treasurer at meetings, such as the financial reports, the annual financial report, budgets, last financial reconciliation report, and statement review by non-signer forms. These items should not come from the treasurer. The secretary also provides reports presented by other officers or committee chairs, such as a membership report update or the results of a fundraiser. Other documents the secretary provides include member and executive board rosters, bylaws, standing rules, and policies adopted by the PTA. The confidentiality, ethics, and conflict of interest agreement signed by all board members, as well as any contracts that were in effect during the period of the review, are also provided by the secretary. During the reconciliation, all financial activity should stop, and checks should only be written in an emergency by the treasurer in office at the time the review is being performed. If applicable, bank signature cards will be updated for additions or deletions in signers. Additionally, you should contact the treasurer or secretary with questions to request missing records or to have them correct errors identified by the committee. If you've done a financial reconciliation before, this checklist is what you're used to seeing and using. It's pages 3 of the financial reconciliation document. It includes the job description of each committee member and the documents that committee member will need. It then lists the steps the committee member needs to complete. You can utilize this document and check off each step as you go and make notes on this page or on a separate page of your findings. This is a new option for completing the review steps. You should still read the job description and documents you should receive from the treasurer and secretary that were on the previous page, but all of the review steps are in a spreadsheet. This spreadsheet allows you to mark each step as complete or NA, and then add comments and any recommendations. While you probably can't read the specific procedures on this slide, the first step says, verify that each check written has proper documentation, PTA funds request form, and associated invoices or receipts. As you complete this step, you can add a Y to the column for completion and then make notes in the comments section, such as 3 funds request forms did not have receipts or invoices attached. Then, in the recommendation section, you can make a recommendation like, the treasurer should not write a check when invoices or receipts are not provided. Once complete, this sheet can then be shared with the third member of the committee who is responsible for completing the financial reconciliation report. We won't be going over every step the committee completes during this session, but I would like to take a few minutes to highlight some of the procedures related to the financial reconciliation process. Let's talk about disbursements first. For every check written, there should be a PTA funds request form that includes attached receipts or invoices related to the request. The form should have all required signatures. The PTA's standing rules may require certain signatures on funds request forms and checks, so check for those. If there is no discussion in the standing rules, then each funds request form should have a committee chair's signature and the treasurer's signature. Lastly, the amount paid should not include sales tax unless the standing rules indicate that certain vendors, such as Sam's or Costco, will be reimbursed for sales tax. You'll also look at the check related to the funds request form. Typically, this is a check image on the bank statement. You'll verify that the correct number of signers signed the checks. PTAs who require more than one signer for checks will have this documented in their standing rules. You'll want to verify that no checks are made payable to cash, and a check was never signed by the individual to who the check is payable. You'll also be ensuring that all checks are accounted for from the first check written for the period being reviewed to the last check. The treasurer should provide any voided checks as well as the checkbook that shows the first check available to issue after the reconciliation is complete. PTAs who have a credit or debit card also have additional information to provide to the committee. The PTA should have adopted the debit-credit card portion of the Texas PTA e-commerce policy, either by including it in the PTA's standing rules or through a policy that is adopted annually by the membership. You can find this policy at txpta.org/policies. Cards must be checked out from the treasurer via a checkout log when a card was needed for a purchase. You'll verify that only authorized check signers checked the cards out. Additionally, just like with a check, make sure a funds request form was completed properly and that receipts and invoices accompany the form. You'll also verify that the card wasn't used to get cash at an ATM or take out cash from the bank. For all disbursements, check or card, you'll need to ensure the treasurer recorded the expense to the appropriate expenses account. For deposits, there are several things that the committee member reviewing deposits will do. You'll check that there is a completed deposit form for each deposit to the bank. This form should include at least 2 individuals who have counted and signed the form. Some PTAs require the treasurer to be a third counter and signer, or that specific people, like an executive board member, be a counter. Check your PTA's standing rules to know your PTA's specific requirements. A bank deposit slip should be attached to each PTA deposit form. The amount on the bank deposit form should match the PTA deposit form. For PTAs that have an online store or offer in-person sales, the PTA should have adopted the portion of Texas PTA's e-commerce policy related to online sale and point-of-sale collection systems. This portion of the policy can be in the PTA's standing rules or can be adopted each year by the membership as a separate policy. You can find this policy at txpta.org/policies. There should be statements for online or in-person sales accounts. The committee will want to confirm that all transfers were made timely to a PTA bank account and that no payments occurred from these accounts. If this is an end-of-year financial reconciliation, the balance on the most recent statement should be 0. Finally, you'll want to verify that all deposits, cash, check, or e-commerce, were recorded to the correct income account. You should review each bank statement to ensure no cash withdrawals or transfers were made from the bank account. You should also ensure that ACH payments were only made to approved vendors. Specific details on what vendors are approved are provided on the financial reconciliation checklist. Reconciliations of the bank statement to the PTA's records should be done monthly. You'll want to check that the reconciliation was done timely, which means shortly after the end of each month. The second committee member reviews the minutes. You'll want to ensure the minutes were prepared, reviewed, and approved in a timely manner. Minutes may be approved by a committee appointed by the president or may be approved at a meeting of the same type: membership minutes at a membership meeting, executive minutes at an executive board meeting. In either case, minutes should document the approval of the prior meeting minutes. You'll also want to confirm that a quorum was present at all membership and executive board meetings where voting occurred. A member that is not a signer on the bank accounts should be appointed by the president at the beginning of the fiscal year to review all PTA accounts. Verify that appointment in minutes and that the non-signer completed the statement review by non-signer form each month for all bank, credit card, and e-commerce statements. After the non-signer completes the statement review by non-signer form, it should be given to the secretary and then presented by the secretary at each regular executive board meeting. Review the minutes to ensure this form was presented and that any findings noted were investigated by the executive board. The prior financial reconciliation report should have been presented and adopted by the membership, and this adoption of the report should be recorded in minutes, and a copy of the report should be attached to the minutes. You'll also want to confirm that the recommendations from the prior financial reconciliation report were considered by the executive board and implemented. Or, if the executive board decided not to implement a recommendation, the minutes reflected their reasoning. Confirm any tax-free sale days were designated in the minutes of an executive board or membership meeting prior to the event. PTAs are allowed to designate 2 tax-free sale days per calendar year. Verify the executive board approved all plans of work and contracts. Verify that all executive board members signed the confidentiality, ethics, and conflict of interest agreement. Confirm that the records retention policy was reviewed by the executive board. If changes were made, verify that members approved the changes at a membership meeting. Verify that any standalone policies were approved by the membership. verify that IRS confirmation of the prior year Form 990 acceptance was presented at the first Executive Board meeting. A financial report should be presented at every regular Executive Board and membership meeting. The beginning balance of each report should agree to the ending balance of the previous report. The financial report should include amendments to the budget when fundraisers are complete to adjust the budget to actuals and include amendments to increase budgeted expenses prior to an amount being spent over the initial budget. These amendments must be approved by the membership at a membership meeting. Make sure all amendments are documented in the minutes as approved by membership. This committee member will want to verify that the PTA's bylaws and standing rules, if applicable, are current with Texas PTA. This means the approval date stamp from Texas PTA on the bylaws and standing rules is dated within 3 years of the beginning of the current year being reviewed. You'll also ensure that all executive board members are members of the PTA. You'll want to make sure that any money collected for a designated purpose was spent only for that purpose. If the PTA advertises that money collected for a fundraiser will be used for a specific purpose, the PTA can only use that money for that specific purpose. Examples of this would be donations collected for senior scholarships or for a specific project for the school. You'll need to confirm that Texas PTA and National PTA portions of dues are recorded as a liability in the PTA records and not as income. Related to state and national dues, you also should ensure that all state and national dues have been submitted to Texas PTA at least monthly. For an end-of-year review, all dues related to the fiscal year being reviewed should have been submitted to Texas PTA, and the balance in the state and national dues liability account should be zero. You also need to verify that the total number of members on the PTA's membership roster agrees with the number of members submitted to Texas PTA. You can verify the total number of dues submitted to Texas PTA on the local PTA roster available at txpta.org/local-pta-leaders. If there is a difference, the difference should be the balance remaining in the liability account. The last thing you'll do is verify all contracts were signed by the president. For an end-of-year review, the third committee member should review the IRS confirmation of acceptance for a 990N. This acceptance is shown on the screen. If the documentation you receive looks different from what is on the screen, go back to the treasurer and request the confirmation of acceptance. If your PTA files a 990EZ or a long form 990, the treasurer will provide you a draft of the 990EZ or long form 990 instead. If you find errors impacting the financial records, the draft will need to be updated. At the end of the review, the draft will be returned to the treasurer who provided the records so that they can file the 990EZ or long form 990. You'll also want to review any correspondence to or from the IRS. Some PTAs have a sales tax permit, while others don't. A sales tax permit is needed if the PTA sells taxable items on more than their 2 tax-free designated days in a calendar year and during the Texas sales tax holiday in August. A list of common taxable items is located in the Treasurer Resource Guide. A link to that guide is provided in the Financial Reconciliation Checklist and Report. If your PTA has a sales tax permit, the treasurer should also provide you a copy of the Sales and Use Tax Permit Return or returns filed. Some PTAs file returns annually, while others file quarterly, so check to see if all returns for the period you are reviewing have been filed. Timely filing is by the 20th of the month following the period for the return. For an annual filer, this would mean the return must be filed by January 20th, or the next business day if the 20th is a holiday or on a weekend. You'll also want to review any correspondence to or from the Comptroller's office. Committee Member 3 will collect feedback from the other committee members. If errors in the financial reports, the treasurer should be instructed to correct these errors. Now it's time for Committee Member Number 3 to prepare the Financial Reconciliation Report. Page 1 is a summary of the financial information, and page 2 includes the findings of the committee, as well as recommendations the committee has. The page also includes a place for all committee members to sign the report. Within the financial report checklist and report document is a helpful example that shows step by step how to obtain each number for the financial section, but we will also walk through that in this video. Let's talk about how to complete the first page of the financial reconciliation report. The information for the financial summary section of the report will come from the annual financial report and the balance sheet. You'll use the starting cash balance forward at the top of the annual financial report for the beginning cash balance forward in the financial summary section of the financial reconciliation report. The total receipts and total expenses from the annual financial report should be added to the financial summary section. The cash balance forward should be the cash balance from the annual financial report before any adjustments for liability accounts are made. So in this report, that number would be $2,289.21. The change in sales tax liability and change in state and national dues should then be added from the annual financial report. You should then calculate the ending adjusted cash balance forward and ensure it matches the amount on the annual financial report. On the right side of the financial summary, you should add in the balances of sales tax liability and state and national dues liability accounts. These amounts will come from the balance sheet. These numbers are not always the same number as the change in liability account, as they are in the example on the screen. The next section is the bank account summary section. You'll need the most current bank statement and the bank reconciliation for that bank statement to complete this section. The balance of the bank statement for the bank account summary section should be the ending balance on the bank statement. Outstanding deposits and payments should come from the bank account reconciliation. The totals should be listed in the bank account summary section, and each outstanding deposit and payment should be listed on the bottom half of the page. There should be few, if any, outstanding deposits. If there are several outstanding payments, you may attach the bank account reconciliation rather than listing out all the individual outstanding payments. The ending adjusted cash balance forward from the financial summary must equal the adjusted bank balance in the bank account summary. If it doesn't, recheck the numbers you've included and recheck your math. If it still doesn't match, contact the treasurer to help resolve the difference. Page 2 of the report is the committee findings. The options for findings are correct, substantially correct with the following adjustments needed, substantially complete with the following items noted, incomplete with the following missing, and incorrect with the following adjustments needed. Each of these findings has examples in the financial reconciliation checklist in case you need some guidance on the correct finding to select. All committee members should meet and agree upon the findings for the report. This page also includes a section for making recommendations. Recommendations are important for the next executive board, so don't hesitate to provide recommendations if you have some ideas. Lastly, each committee member should sign and date the report. Once the reconciliation is complete, the Financial Reconciliation Committee provides the records directly to the current treasurer and secretary. You do not provide the records back to the individuals who gave them to you unless those individuals are continuing in the same position after the review is complete. The only exception to this is for PTAs who file a 990EZ or long form 990. In those cases, you will provide a draft of the 990 with any corrections back to the treasurer who provided the records so that they may file the 990EZ or long form 990. You'll provide a copy of the financial reconciliation report to the treasurer, executive board, and membership at different times depending on the reason for the financial reconciliation. If the review is being completed for the required end-of-year review or due to a change in check signers, the report is given to the treasurer immediately after the review is complete. It is then presented to the executive board and then to the membership at the next membership meeting. If the review is being conducted at the request of the president or 3 or more members, the report is presented to the members for adoption at a membership meeting. A copy is given to the treasurer after the member meeting, and then it is presented to the executive board. The chair of the Financial Reconciliation Committee should present the report at the membership and executive board meetings. For any review, when theft, fraud, or embezzlement is suspected, the report is not released until the steps in Texas PTA's theft, fraud, and embezzlement policy are followed. If you as a committee suspect theft, fraud, or embezzlement, you should follow the theft, fraud, and embezzlement policy. Please act immediately. Delaying the process could put more of the PTA's funds in jeopardy. Contact the council president, Texas PTA's field service representative for your district, and Texas PTA's treasurer, and let them know the circumstances. You can find how to contact these individuals in the theft, fraud, and embezzlement policy. Next, contact your PTA's president and principal and let them know the circumstances. The president and principal will then continue to follow the policy. As a committee, you will need to determine who is involved and how much money is missing to the best of your ability. Depending on the amount, the police may initiate an investigation, and you may need to provide copies of the records to them. As a committee, you may be asked to hold the records, including any debit cards and checks, until the PTA accounts are secured. It's important that you not give any records back to a former executive board member when theft, fraud, or embezzlement is suspected. In case you have questions as you complete the financial reconciliation, I wanted to remind you of the resources Texas PTA has available. First, visit the Financial Reconciliation webpage at txpta.org/financial-reconciliation. The Financial Reconciliation Checklist and Report document we've been discussing today has a list of frequently asked questions that may address your question. If you don't get your question answered there, reach out to your council president or the field service representative for your district. If you don't know who those individuals are, you can find them on the local roster available at txpta.org/local-pta-leaders. The Texas PTA Treasurer is also a resource. You can reach her directly at treasurer@txpta.org or contact Texas PTA at 1-800-TALK-PTA for more assistance. Thank you for taking the time today to understand the reasons for the financial reconciliation, your role in the process, and what needs to be done once the review is complete.